I was told I had a problem long before I realised I did have a problem, and I think where I realised I did have a problem was through the family, through the family interventions. And I don't know if it's because I had my back up against authorities and the people that tried to tell me I had a problem for such an early age. But I wouldn't, I could have it for my family, you know, because I know that they were with me side, like, you know, I got the love for them no matter what. So I suppose that was when I realised I had the problem, when I started to really affect my family.
I was starting to do things that I would never have dreamt that I would do, and taking money out of, you know, as I said, my mum can't see, and I used to go up to her purse and take money out of her purse from where she was standing, you know, just a few feet away. And I would take money out of my dad's wallet, and they just couldn't trust me anymore. I tried to sell things from the house. You know, it really got that bad.
The damage it did to me was, you hear it all the time, I suppose, really, but that was bad enough. That was bad enough. It didn't come close to the damage I did to the people that cared about me. I walked through their lives as if they didn't exist, as if they didn't exist. I couldn't care less about the damage I'd done.
It was just me being extravagant with everything I had and just taking it all to the limit. And it was a scream. Everything was a scream, and everything just needed to be used, and any amount in any way. I didn't like me or the world I was in.
In the space of an hour and a half, I'd done the whole lot, the whole cash bag. All I had left was cheques. I didn't even have a penny, nothing. So I was in the minibus, and I thought, I'm going to ram this straight in a brick wall. I was looking at the brick wall. But that's the gambling mentality, or any mentality, because I wasn't thinking of my kids. Like losing your dad at Christmas, they'll never forget it. But you don't think like that. You do after, when you've like sorted your head out. But you're a very selfish person in addiction, which I was. I put my hands up. I'm not the same person now, but I was back in the day. So even when that happened and I was going to like do myself in, I still didn't stop.
I knew something was wrong, something was up, but I didn't know where to go, how to change. But I knew something was a problem or something like that. But the problem was, because of the word problem, I liked that problem. I liked smoking drugs. I liked getting released, getting my police discharge grant, automatically walking to the dealer's house. I knew where his house was. Smoking, piping, doing the same thing over and over again. Like, until the point, like, you don't notice until the years pass. The next thing is 1 month, and the next thing is 4 or 5 years down the line, you're still back in prison.
But I wasn't out of that prison sentence long. I was only out 3 months, and I got busted, and I got caught with quite a lot of drugs. So luckily enough, I got bail from it, but they told me I was looking at 5 or 6 years. I was broken. There's no way I could go back to jail.
I think things just got a lot worse. I sort of, after Dad agreed to have Tyler adopted, I just started smoking crack, heroin. And yeah, I just don't remember a whole year.
The thing that motivated me to change was, obviously over the years I'd tried to get help, but it was the Christmas prior to going into the Priory. I couldn't see my children on the Christmas day, but the thing that broke me was I couldn't even afford to buy them a present. They didn't have any presents off their mum for Christmas because I spent it on drink.
Tried loads of different things, but I think my heart was never really in it. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, I'll do that, it'll make it easier. The methadone means that I've not got to rush out and try and score straight away. And yeah, it was pretty bleak. And I think like some of the situations that I found myself in it happened really quickly. So I was homeless, I was in a B&B, I'd cut off face support, I had totally different relationships again, and anybody that I knew or that I wanted to spend any time with, they were all just about that lifestyle really.
I remember once being, on many occasions, being without money and without drugs and being desperate and walking around looking for an opportunity, for some reason in my mind, often in the rain. So you're just in this aimless position where you're trying to get money to buy drugs in order to feel differently, in order to feel better. And I remember that must have happened to me once too many times, and I decided I need to somehow get out of this pattern of living. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I knew I had to do something about it, and it got so bad in the end that I was. It was a situation sort of developed really. I hadn't had a drink for 10 months, and I picked up a drink after 10 months, and in 4 days I was lying on the floor of a public convenience in Stratford-on-Avon, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up. I was so ill, and there was a man. He tried to help me up, and I remember clawing up the brass pipe in the corner of this lavatory, and thinking, Jesus, this has got to stop. You know, I can't go on like this. Now, the guy that used to drive the van to take us to Sunday school when I was little, he was still in my life. His name was John, and John would stay connected to me by coming and visit me at random times and giving me a book, or giving me a video, like a VHS video, and saying, have a look at that, and I'll come back and see you in a couple of weeks and we'll have a chat. He took me to, it was like a rally. It was called a Nicky Cruz rally. Nicky Cruz was this guy that was in the books that he was giving me. He gave me a book called The Cross and the Switchblade. I had a friend, and he was a blacksmith, and I managed to get into a restaurant, and there was a phone box which I knew in the restaurant, and I called him and I said, you've got to come and get me because I'm in a mess here. And he did. He came and he got me, and he chucked me in the back of his Land Rover, and he took me back to where his forge was and all that sort of thing, and his wife looked after me and cleaned me up. I was in a terrible mess and everything. And I said, you've got to find somewhere for me to go now, because I'm going to have fits before long. John remained in touch, and he had a number for a rehab. And so I must have been, we've shot forward, I must be 22, 23. My dad was ill. Eventually my dad died, and that I kind of sunk a bit deeper into that life of, crime and using drugs and all of that. And he had this number, and I thought, I'm going to give it a try. And so I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I'd had enough and I wanted to make a change. And so John organised it. He spoke to the rehab. We went and visited it, and they said, yeah, we can take you, but it's going to take a while. It's going to be at least, I think, 6 to 10 weeks to get in. We both had a mutual friend who was a GP, but he was on holiday at the moment, so there was a locum there, and the locum found somewhere, and he found this hospital, and he said, yeah, they'll have me. And so he chucked me in the back of his Land Rover once more and took me to this hospital, this clinic, and just dumped me there, really. And I remember being in this detox bay at this hospital, and I could hear him talking to the nurses outside. And he came into the detox bay. He said, I'm going now, and he was crying. And he said, I don't like saying this to you, but you do this to me once more. And he said, I'm not going to be here for you. I'm not going to be here. And I knew he meant it. I knew he meant it. And he was so important to me. We'd grown up together, and we'd drunk together. We'd done everything together,
There's a place along the Uxbridge Road, like we'd be there drinking all the time, smoking a lot of crack, and I was just out of control, literally fighting men all the time, fighting with him. And I was always black and blue and beaten up. And I remember going to my drug worker and saying, I've had enough.
I'd just done 3 back-to-back biggish sentences, and I knew it was coming on top again, and I was broken, emotionally broken and everything. And I stood there, and this police officer, I forget his name, but he'd known me since I was about 15, so he'd known me like 20 years. We stood there, and he said, "Are you all right?" And I can remember saying, "I'm tired," and crying. And he went, "You what?" I said, "I'm tired." And I can still remember it to this day, and I can still feel that pain. And I was tired.
And she was like, well, we still got the funding for your rehab from before. I was like, oh, I'll go there then. I'll do that. She said, well, you're going to have to work at it, but at the end of it, you're going to have, at this place, you'll have a job and a place to live. I thought, fuck it, I'm absolutely sold. And I thought, yeah, I want that.
So I don't know when the problem was a problem. And I don't know if I masked it and hid it behind all the drugs, but I think it had built up and built up and built up. And it was there. And I don't know why it was this police officer, but when he asked me and I said, I'm tired. And he said, what can I do? Or how can I help? I forget his exact words. And I said, I need help. I need to go to rehab. And I can remember having a distance conversation with somebody years ago about rehab. And they mentioned a specific rehab. And that had always stuck to my head as being as a miracle get out clause of life and everything. And he said, it's not easy to do this, Liam. And he said, look, I'm just going to have a word with the probation and the drug workers. We're all based in the same building for prolific offenders at the time. And he was gone about half an hour. And I can remember thinking, what the fuck? I've just asked for help and you've just left me. What's happening? And they all came in together. We said, right, Liam, this isn't an easy process, but we've got you a day placement in 6 weeks' time. Are you willing to go? The moment had passed then, and I thought, right, they need to just hear what I'm going to say. I went, yeah, of course I am. Already in my head, I'm thinking, I fooled these. I can carry on living my life I wanted to live. But I knew it wasn't real. I knew I knew I was lying to myself then.
I actually thought, well, I realised I was in a mess. By that time I was on methadone as well. So I'd gone to my doctor, I'd gone to the local drug service, I'd got a methadone script. It hadn't, I thought, oh, if I get on this methadone script, it will sort out the physical withdrawals and then I won't need to use heroin. But that wasn't the case. Yes, it did take away the physical withdrawals, but the psychological addiction and my lust for the drug just didn't diminish at all. In fact, it became greater and greater.
Like I say, it took my soul. My last jail sentence took my soul. And that's the first time where I thought because I'd do anything. My inner strength would get me through anything. But that's the first time where I contemplated suicide. I wanted to kill myself. I can remember going upstairs to the bathroom with an handful of tablets. First time in my life, which I thank an higher power. I didn't have the courage to do something because I would have done anything as a child growing up. But this is the first time I didn't have the guts to take these tablets.
I thought, well, if I go and see a counsellor and sort out my emotional issues, then I might not need to use the drugs. So I went to my GP and I said, can you hook me up with a counsellor? I saw this counsellor and she said, oh, no, I can't work with you. You need an addiction specialist. And she sent me to this chap called Simon Good, who, I literally credit him with saving my life, because he was a really gentle psychotherapist and he knew what he was doing and he knew that I would be resistant. So he just gently started to plant some seeds. And he started telling me about, 12-step fellowships and about treatment and that addiction was an illness and I was caught in it and I needed to think about a serious life change. And at first I just fobbed him off and, what I wasn't interested at all. And I would go to the sessions completely stoned. And he said to me, look, I can't do proper psychotherapy with you because you're under the influence. But if you want to come and see me and do some counselling, we can chat about what's going on for you.
And I've never asked for help. You don't ask for help. Back growing up, you couldn't ask for help. It was a sign of weakness. But luckily enough, I was that broken. I'm still addicted to crack. I'm still addicted to smack. I'm looking at a big jail sentence. I'm at my lowest point. Still don't think that drugs is a problem. My lifestyle is a problem. Drugs isn't a problem. I'm at my lowest point, and I can remember I was with a girl at the time. I owe my life to her, to be fair. I asked for help for the first time, which you don't ask for help growing up, especially someone who I portrayed myself to be. You don't ask for help, and she says, I can't help you, but we'll go to the doctor.
So that's what I did. And over a period of 2 years, he just drip fed me this stuff in a very gentle way. And eventually I went to a couple of NA meetings, and I just thought, wow, this is insane. These guys are just in a cult and they're crazy and they're just moaning about why they can't use drugs. Why don't they just go and do it? And that's what I was doing. You know, I had drugs in my pocket and I would just go outside and use them. But I think there was a part of me that connected with the truth of it. There was part of me that connected with the realities that they were sharing and the experiences that they'd had. And even though I didn't realise it, there was a part of me that knew I'd be back there. And it was February the 12th, 2003, you know, and I woke up and I realised, you know, I need to go to rehab. I need to have something in between me and the drugs because I just could not stop myself.
So I went to the doctor and I basically put it on his toes, and I think he really knew that I meant it. And I would have cut my nose off to spite my face because that's the person I was. I told him if he didn't help me that day, I was going to leave the building, I was going to kill myself. And I would have killed myself just to spite that doctor. That's the chaos and where my mentality was growing up. Luckily enough, he couldn't help me that day, but he says, I'll refer you to a rehab and you're going to this rehab. And for me, that was the answer. Once again, I didn't think I had a problem with drugs. So I thought, I'm going to go into rehab. I'm going to get off of heroin. I'm going to get off of crack. I'm going to start looking fresh. I can stand up in front of that judge. He'll let me off the sentence because I'm doing well now. I'm not using drugs no more. And as soon as I'm let off on that sentence, I'm going to go back, smoke my weed, take my ecstasy, take my trips and my amphetamine and carry on using drugs. I just want to stay away from heroin. So that was my plan. And I went into rehab, and that's the only reason I went into rehab was to get off that jail sentence, not to get off of drugs.
I didn't actually stop till I got caught robbing people technically. And then obviously I went, I did go to court when I got caught, and they took me all over the country. It was a shock, but if I'm being realistic, it was actually a relief because I knew I'd get caught anyway, and I just wanted to stop it. It was cracking me up. Getting up every single day, and all you did was gamble, you weren't eating. Your fit kids had no food, and my partner, she didn't have an inkling.
I said, James, man, what's up, man? What's happening with you? I said, God, man, I got a problem, man. I got a problem. Like, calm my mouth. Like, I've got a problem, man. No, I was in tears, man. Because I realised I've been in the system for that long that I need some help, man. And he said, James, I'm not gonna give you no losses. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna help you change your life. I'm gonna send you to a prison that there's hardly any drugs there, but there's a lot of courses, and you can change your life forever. I thought, what? He said, yeah, I will. And off I went to Edmonds Hill.
Well, when I got caught for all the robbing I'd been doing, overcharging all over the country, I tried an hypnotist, that didn't work. And obviously I was still in the gambling in my brain. That's what you have to change your brain, how your brain works. And I bumped into a chap called Kenny, and he said, Good Gamblers Anonymous. You never know, it might help. And I thought I'll go and get a letter to stop me going to prison.
I became very popular in that prison, in the sense of, on a positive note, not negative note, because I was a barber and they had a barber course there. And they wanted the head barber to teach the other inmates how to cut hair. They had a teacher there anyway, but just wanted the head barber to teach other inmates how to cut hair. And that's what I'd done, you know. And I found a passion for being able to teach someone, being able to communicate properly with them, not an intimidating factor. I was liked by lots of people. And I remember I was in an exercise yard, walking around, and I had a mate called Cesar. He's a Greek geezer. He's funny and massive. But he was a take drug taker, but he would never know because he's so massive. And this woman walked over, in a little landmark, walked over. Cesar, can I speak with you? He said, yeah. He said, you want to go rehab? He said, nah, give that to Jason. So what? I ain't fucking Amy Winehouse, man. And at the time, we had Amy Winehouse, his husband, in the prison. We had Boy George was in the prison. We had the Blake Civil, all the people in the prison at the same time. They called it Celebrity Island. And I thought, you have to be famous to go to rehab. He said, no, you get funding and that. I said, what? You get funding? He said, yeah, go and talk to them. I said, what are you on about? They're called carrots. I was like, I ain't a vegetarian, bro. He said, you idiot, it's carrots. He's laughing. He said, it's not for vegetarians, man. Carrots is for drug addicts and that. I said, I ain't a drug addict though. I said, bro, you're a drug addict, man. And then off I went to these people, and they put me in little courses at the start because they want to know if you're engaging, like if you're willing to engage, which I was. I've done crack awareness. It's not the greatest of programs, but it still makes you aware. The word awareness is in it, so it makes you aware of it. And I started to do all this stuff. And then basically I just got that inner motivation to want something different. Where can I go with this? What can I do with this, you know?
Being caught up in it and then like realising I had a problem, and then obviously the question does come up, what would change and how do you change? And I suppose obviously when I raised it for my family, I did start reaching out for support, and then I got involved a bit more than just a script. Because I was like, as I say, I went along for the script. It was fucking free drugs, so he's not going to get free drugs. But there was never really any meaningful change. But then I started to access some of these services, you know, rather than just going and collecting my script and pissing in the pot, and try to really get involved on what was on offer. And there was some really good workers back then, you know, that cared. I said that like there's no good workers now, but I just, like, you know, and cared, and I suppose tried to kind of plant these seeds and motivate me for change, and I took them up on some of the offers that had been getting offered to me for years and years, but they fell on deaf ears.
Motivation to change was something it was a really slow process, I think, for sort of engaging with local drug and alcohol services. So there was one called CDPS right at the start, so that was just like maintenance, methadone, a little bit of key working. I wasn't in a place there. And then I remember I moved to another place called Leaf in Edinburgh, which is infamous and famous at the same time. But I think one of the things was I couldn't see it. I could not see that there was a different life or anything. I didn't see anybody around me. I didn't see anybody in recovery. Anybody that got recovery, they disappeared. And I remember, like, sometimes I'd speak with like old mates and that, and they'd always say, like, oh, when people go away, you know what I mean, or they sort their life out, they become different, they become quite ignorant and all these sort of things. So yeah, I had that, and it just made me curious because I'd never actually seen anybody that had done well.
By me doing this, by taking in off of the groups, I started to get a little bit of stability, you know. I stopped reducing a little bit and started to kind of hang out a motivation, and I did try many ways, you know. I didn't get recovery right away, you know. That wasn't my story. It took a good few attempts in different ways of recovery. I tried day programs where I would go to a day structured program and I'd go home in the evening. I went to these crisis centres where I was brought up. They had a crisis centre that was mixed between detoxes and crisis. What I mean by crisis is they would put you in there when you were that chaotic, stabilise you on replacement drugs, obviously a substitute to what I was addicted to, That's like obviously methadone programs and Subutex programs, and they would stabilise you, give you respite, and you'd go back into the community to then get engaged in the group. I think I must have done that about 10 times.
I think early on I didn't have a motivation to change because it didn't seem realistic that I could actually change. I just didn't think that it was possible. So it was working in cars, and I remember there was somebody, Laura, and she was like a really significant, really nice, genuine, down-to-earth person that just listened. And I always felt that when I'd engaged with like key workers before, I was like, I'd go in, my guard would be up, I'd let them hear, or I'd say what they need to say, I'd get my script, I'd be using the needle exchange on the way out, and that's how it was for a long time. But I remember with Laura, it was just, there was something different. Like, she would always listen, she would always like just go the extra mile, and I really always just felt that.
And then I got an opportunity to kind of go for residential. I think it was one of my last stunts in in that crisis centre, and I got the chance to go for funding and go for residential treatment, and I remember it was amazing, because it was like the funders were like showing me these catalogues and travelling me down south. I'd never been out of Scotland to go on day visits to some of these residential places, and it was really like, it was inspirational, you know, because I went and visited these places and I seen people that were similar to probably what I was gravitating towards, but they were like talking all this positive recovery stuff, man, and it was, I'm not going to deny it, it was capturing, man, it captured me. And that's what I'd done. I'd followed a structured programme on the community and evidenced that, like, that the motivation and stuff like that, and also that community wasn't, I couldn't get it in the community. You know, I could get so far, but I wouldn't be able to completely. So yeah, I got funding and off I went.
I kind of just plodded along. I didn't even actually think it was a real thing. My main priority was using drugs, getting my script, getting back to my house and just being isolated and cut off. And I think when you didn't actually know that recovery exists, it's hard to see that that's a possibility that you can have or that you can achieve that. So yeah, I stayed like literally 5 minutes for drug and alcohol service, which was handy. And it was a slow burner. It was a slow burner. I was sort of led along. I listened to people about what they say could happen. And yeah, before I knew it, it was like, yep, you've been granted funding. I was like, all right. A little bit nervous, didn't really know what it meant. But I think like I remember back to the times, and I just remember like how I actually felt about myself. And like one of the reflections is that I always thought I've got a drug problem, and I did have a drug problem. But the main problem that I was really struggling with the most, it was my mental health and how I felt about myself.
The day I went into the priory, I was overwhelmed. I wanted to be there. I'd packed a suitcase. My sister had bought me all new clothes, so I looked decent because I was about 5 stone, had not ate for months. And the first thing they did was take my mouthwash off me, and I couldn't understand why. But it was because it got alcohol in it. Well, I wasn't going to drink it. I'd never even thought of that, but obviously people do.
When I came through detox, I got into the restaurant, and I remember there's a woman there called Fane, and she was we were having an evening meal, and she said you're going to run away after you've finished the meal, aren't you? I said yeah, I've been in all these sort of places, and she said, don't go, just stay and talk to me for the night and everything. I said, no. She said, not for you. She said, for me. She said, I'm terrified.
I arrived at 8:30 in the morning, and I had to wait until about 7 o'clock at night to be given any drugs because the doctor had to come to prescribe me lithium. And I remember sitting with a lady called Sam that was the chef there, and I said, I'm dying. I couldn't keep still. I was shaking, obviously withdrawing, and it was the worst thing ever. I then was prescribed the lithium, and the first 2 nights I was in a room on my own and settled in, and I remember seeing a lady coming up the drive. She got loads of hair missing. And I thought, oh gosh, she looks poorly, obviously not realising how poorly I was. And I went into my room that night, which was a double room, and this lady was there. I went into the bathroom where I'd put all my toiletries all nice, and she'd been sick all over them. And I thought, oh my God, and I went and got some help. Anyway, that night, although I was in exactly the same boat as her, I thought, God, what if she kills me in the night? I'd got all these horrible thoughts going through my head, as she was obviously very poorly like I was. But we became the bestest friends.
Breakfast, she was there again, and she said, are you going after breakfast? And I said, yes. I said, I've got a £5 note in my shoe, which I always put in for these treatment centres and things like that, so I got a taxi to get out. So I said, yes, I'm off. She said, well, there's an AA meeting in the canteen this morning, and why don't you come to the AA meeting with me and you know, go afterwards? And I said, yeah, okay, all right. And I'd been to AA many times before and everything. So I went to the AA meeting with her, and there was a man taking a chair there. And I'd never seen him either before or since. But he started to tell his story. And when he was telling his story, he was in a strange sort of way, he was telling my story. It was almost identical to my story. And he finished his story by saying, so that there was an explanation for why he had to live his life that way, and it wasn't his fault. There was something wrong with him. And then I thought, in my sick mind, I thought, well, if there's something wrong with me, then it could be put right.
We worked together through our journey, really, in the Priory, and I met some amazing people from all walks of life. And the counselling that we had, I went in there not really knowing what to expect. And when you're doing your counselling sessions, you don't realise how much you get from that, by talking, by being open and listening to other people's stories.
So I decided, I'm going to just stay and see what this is all about. So I stayed. And I was there for 4 weeks in the end. I stayed there for 4 weeks, and I haven't had a drink from that day to this. And that was many years ago. But I went through a total program of abstinence with this treatment centre, and critical as ever about the counsellors and all that sort of stuff that you see in these sort of places, and I think I could do this job better than you, and all that sort of sick thinking that was going on with me at the time and everything. But anyway, I haven't had a drink since then.
I was meant to actually come, I was meant to come down south. And they sent me somewhere else for the detox part first, obviously because of how funding works, and it was probably cheaper. So they sent me to this other place in Glasgow, and when I went to this place in Glasgow, I knew I was coming down south, and I went down here, and I thought, I want to stay here, you know. So I sort of I convinced my funders to transfer my funding over to just remain in Glasgow and do the after part of the detox rather than just the detox. And I done the programme. And again, it was probably the best belly laughs I've had in a long, long time. That first initially doing a detox and actually getting to learn a little bit about myself and what they try and encourage you to build up for the tools that they try and kind of teach you that you would take on to kind of maintain your recovery. Loved it.
2 police officers were bringing me down on the Friday, and I had the phone number And I can remember phoning off my mum's landline day before. I said, I'm not going. I've changed my mind. I don't need to go. You know what I mean? You don't have to pick me up or anything, put phone down. But next morning at 7 o'clock, they banged on the door and said, we're here to take you. I said, but I told you I'm not going. He said, get in the car. You're going now. And on the way down, they did make my life a bit difficult, a lot difficult. Just telling me about all the pain I'd caused people, the misery I'd caused wider society. And also saying if I came back, that I was going away, and they'd make it their mission to make sure I weren't on the streets. As soon as they saw me in Mansfield, they would pick me up, and they'd make sure everybody else would pick me up. So it'll waste time coming back and drop me off.
Got to the aftercare bit, and again, I didn't know at the time, but it's very subtle. You know, when you're caught up in addiction on what we're living with on a daily basis. And I convinced myself that I was all right to go home and was all right going to go and do this and do that, and successfully exited that place to go back to my old environment where I had done all my using for the get-go. It was like as soon as I got off the bus, I was straight into the off licence. Again, I was a cracking smack addict, you know. This is all right. I can have a drink, but for me, I think it was an experience that maybe I needed, because I'm not saying that people can't drink, but I knew that I can't, because the minute I had that, I was just excessively doing it again, right back to where I was in my childhood, trying to get a maximum and couldn't put it down, sort of thing, and I could just spiraled very, very quickly.
It was horrible. I didn't sleep. Flipping heck. 20 odd days not sleeping properly. Getting up at middle at night, red hot, sweating, cold baths. I can remember it all. But I can remember not leaving. And I can remember I'm not going to leave. And I thought, and I treated that, when I got there, I treated that same as I treated my drug use and everything else. I gave it my all. And I thought, I'm giving this my everything. I've given everything to heroin, I've given everything to crime, I'm going to give everything to this. This is it. I've got to do this. And I did, and I just jumped in, both feet.
I think I was very fortunate and lucky at the time, because within 5 days I was in intensive care with serious head injuries, because of where my behaviours led after being under the influence of alcohol and back in that old environment and bumping into some old heads. God knows how it come about. Probably come about like you know, all the money robbed. I don't know. You know how it goes. I think what I was caught up in. Anyway, I got jumped, and as I say, I was kind of lucky because I was in hospital. I had head injuries because of that. But my funder, I got up and I just realised that I'd made a massive mistake. I thought, why did I not go for the full relocation or whatever it was that was on offer that I chose to not go with and cut it and convince them that I was going to do everything positive and go back to my environment. And I put that to my funders, and they were like, right, we'll give you another chance. However, we're not going to send you back to the place that you've just left, and you need to go to this place that you were going to originally, because it was, as I say, it was only a few days of drinking alcohol, and it would have led, under no illusions, if I had never got the opportunity and I hadn't gone and seen the funders after that, I would have just been caught right back up in it.
I got a couple of postcards and Christmas cards off the same two coppers, asking if I was doing well, if I was still there, and remember not to come back to Mansfield. And that was a significant point in my changing as well. It was like, flipping heck. You know what I mean? I had an idea of what I thought these two police officers were like that brought me down. These postcodes and this Christmas card said something completely different, and I started to challenging how I saw the world and who I was, and they were right and I was wrong.
The place that I chose to go to, or I should have been going to, didn't offer any fast track, quick programmes. You couldn't go there and just do the aftercare. You had to go through the whole programme, build the relationships with the peer groups, to go through the stages that I was wanting. So I got another set of funding, and as I say that, and again, that's where I'm fortunate, because sometimes it's really funding's it's hard, and especially in some areas and others than most. But you know, you probably wouldn't get the opportunities like that, or it would be very hard. And then off I went with a week gap for doing like 7 months in this treatment centre, to that experience, how quick it got to the stage where it got to, where I was in hospital, and there I was, off I was, heading down south, first time, like, you know, it's quite scary, like, we're having such a close family as well. I knew I was going down south, and I probably wasn't coming back, and again, because of the changes I knew I needed to make, because I knew I needed to change up my environment and start afresh.
I remember in the prison we had a rap what was it, like a poetry and a rap assembly, where visitors could come in and watch us perform, basically, performance. And we all wrote our own songs, and we all went to the church every week, like 3 times a week, and practicing and rehearsing. And it was such a brilliant time. Like, I met some really nice people in that program, yeah. And I thought, wow, like, this is different, because acting was one of my main things I wanted to do as a kid. I was very good at it. It's the only class in school I could escape in. Like, I didn't have to be this gang kind of coach. I didn't have to be a drug addict. I could just be me.
Yeah, I remember going down for a visit, and yeah, it seemed like quite a nice place. I still, at that time, I couldn't actually see me going there. I was just like going with the flow. Yeah, that'll happen, but I didn't actually believe that was going to happen. But I remember going in, and so one of my mates, who's still one of my good mates now, used together, seen him at his worst, he's seen me at my worst. I remember going in and seeing him, picture of health, put on weight, doing really well, and it was just like, I'd never experienced that ever. Like, I hadn't seen somebody in recovery. I hadn't seen anybody that had been quite close to me as well who was doing so well. So that's, for me, that was one of the moments where I was like, this could actually work.
We wrote our songs, and when I listen back to it, it's all about recovery. Like, the song's not about drug addiction, like your average person might work about big chains, gold chains and that. It's about recovery, and I was like, what? I didn't know what recovery was. But I was just, some hope was in me to put these words to paper and come out with the lyrics, and which were quite good, and be rapped about recovery and change. So that was where the motivation came from. And this woman came to me, she said, Jason, guess what? I said, what? We've got you funding. You're gonna go rehab in 2 weeks. I was like, what? Whoa. I was like, no, I got scared. Like, oh man, what's rehab? I don't know what rehab is. I don't need a rehab. Like, rehab is for these people that are like fucked. I didn't believe I was fucked, but I was fucked. You know? Sorry for my language, but yeah, I was in the gutter.
Yeah, I remember just going in, like, heavily withdrawn pupils, like, and just like, it was just so many different dialects, loads and loads of people, and it was just incredibly overwhelming. And I did not want to stay. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I think, in all honesty, if physically I'd felt fit enough, I probably would have left, and that would have been the biggest mistake I'd made in my life. But I even had like conversations around like plans when you leave, what that's got to look like, where you're got to go. But I didn't have any other options. I literally had nowhere to go.
Addiction took me that low, it proper destroyed me. Like, proper destroyed me. Took morals, took my confidence, everything. But I still didn't believe it was doing that to me. Now I looked in the mirror, I probably was like 9 or 8 stone. And I'm still thinking I'm big old boy. Because this was strong, but this wasn't no more, you know. And off I went to rehab. You know, I went to rehab on a jail swerve, to be honest. You know, like, because you get out early. So I had a tag in a rehab. I was like, right, they tag you in rehab. Yeah, they tag you in rehab. But that was the first joy of my life, like, proper like escapism to realise, putting pen to paper.
I'd kind of been trying on and off to not use for probably 2 or 3 years at that point. I was 29, and, you know, I would say to myself at the beginning of the year, right, New Year's resolution, I'm not going to use this year, I'm just going to stick to smoking dope, I'm going to stick to my methadone, I'm going to bring my methadone down, come off the heroin. And then I would get to Christmas time and it would be like, oh my God, I've done another year of using heroin, another year of not moving forward in my life.
Back then, there wasn't the infrastructure of treatment that there is now. And so most people that I know, and I did it a few times myself involuntarily, they clucked it out. You just stayed at home and you just stopped using, and you climbed the walls for a bit. You had diarrhea, you felt sick. It was like a bad case of the flu. But I ended up going to my sister's flat. I ripped a few people off when I did that, and that wasn't deliberate. It was just kind of where I was at the time. I just walked away from my life, and I had stuff that belonged to other people, and that acted as a deterrent. It meant I couldn't go back, because if I went back, I'd be in trouble.
After this sort of awakening that I had, I said to him, look, I need to go to rehab. Will you help me do it? And he kindly wrote a letter to my parents explaining the predicament that I was in. And they were amazing, actually. They took it really well. They were shocked, they were upset, but they took it really well, and they supported me to go to this amazing rehab called Cloud's House. And that was 2003, June the 12th was the day that I walked in there.
I eventually got into rehab and managed to get to a point where I could start to realise that change. Because up until the moment I walked in, and even for the first few weeks there, it was all a bit of a game, it was a bit of a fantasy, but suddenly that was becoming real, because now I had a means to get from A to B. And so, yeah, I kind of took it on from there.
I thought it was, I'm going to go there and I'm going to stop using. And I thought it was just the drugs that was a problem. But then a lot of people told me, no, it's not that. It's actually me that I was a problem. It was my attitudes and my behaviours that were the problem.
When I actually went to my first meeting on a Wednesday night, and I hadn't told a single human being, none of my best friends, my partner, anybody what I'd done. And I told 10 blokes in a room, and I listened to their therapies, and then they got to me, and when I got it all off my chest, I broke down, and I realised that I actually felt better when I left the room. I got a big weight off my shoulders.
I think it was being able to talk openly about my past. And unpack all that, all the sadness and all the shit stuff that I'd been through. I was able to talk about it and sort of over time learn to let it go.
After 9 months, I was at court. They wrote me a letter, and then I went to court, stood up, and it said that GA, Gamblers Anonymous, said I was really good for the group and helping people. And I actually sold my house, and I paid all the people I got caught back every penny.
Yeah, and I think it was about building relationships with the people around me where I could be honest and I could sort of be myself. And I sort of found who I really was. I sort of got an understanding of that. I think over time you just learn to realise that you are a good person and you don't need all that other stuff to sort of get to where you need to be, if that makes sense. Yeah, you learn to like yourself.
They advised me, Gamblers Anonymous, to get a hobby, which I started playing football in my late 30s. And they also recommended that I packed up doing the door knocking and get a proper job, so I wouldn't have cash in hand anymore. So I decided I'd go and work at a pizza factory in Nottingham, making pizzas, but I didn't actually get the job as making pizzas. I got the job sweeping floors for 8 hours a day, flour. So from earning £1.5 grand a week, I was coming out with £160 a week with 2 kids and a mortgage with an house with nothing done. So I was like back to square one, skint with nothing, but I was happier.
So I gave it a day. I went, just give it a day, see how that goes. Went one day, another couple of days, and then all around me at that time, you've got all this, it seemed like madness, but it's therapy. It's like a therapeutic model, how that works. You had like structure. You had all these people as well who were like, they'd had like horrific backgrounds, they had all these like times in prison. They were the nicest of people, and it blew my mind. I didn't trust anybody. I thought, there's no way you've done all these things and you're like genuine, caring, supportive, all these sort of things. So I think like culture-wise, it just absolutely blew my mind.
I was in treatment 22 months. People still take the mickey out of me now of how staunch I was in there. A lot of people thought it was fake. A lot of people thought it was false, but I knew I had to live my life a certain sort of way. And I gave up everything. Smoking, cigarettes, the lot, it all went.
I think some of the stuff that helped with me in there was I started realising things that I can take responsibility for my life. I can feel more confident if I do these things. I can be better socially if I do these things. You know what I mean? It's like actually seeing people as well who were further on in the programme sort of gave me that belief where, like growing up in Edinburgh, I'd never ever seen any of that. I'd never seen recovery. I didn't even think it was real. Whereas you had people that were later on in the programme who were ready to look for work. They were 100 and odd days clean or whatever. And yeah, I think when I got it, I was fine. I was absolutely committed. I sort of started to believe in something, and I think I had the opportunity to really like, I could see that I was responsible for my life. You know what I mean? Instead of like blaming this person or it's that or the weather's rubbish or whatever, like whatever sort of sad excuse I had, that was just, I had the ultimate responsibility for my life, and I took that.
I can remember talking about some deep-rooted things that happened that were traumatic in my childhood, and I can remember thinking, if I mention this, it's out and these people know and they can use that against me. And I can remember thinking, what's it matter? Because if they're going to do the same as me, it won't matter. It'll be done. And if they are going to use it as a weapon against me, it's not going to matter because I'm in a different world to them, and I've been moving on from that. So I just started being brave.
I think the first 2 weeks seemed longer. Well, maybe not at the time, but it seemed longer than the whole programme because it was literally hour to hour. Nowhere to stay, but I think when you grasp something that was totally different, and then I was racking up numbers. I was 9 days clean, I was 10 days clean, I was 52 days clean, and then it was just like that momentum and the relationships that I bought, that I'd built when I was in there. It just seemed like there was a possibility of doing something different, and that was the main thing that sort of excited me. I never wanted, well, let's say I wanted to move on, but I never ever, like for that moment, it was like I'm never want to go back to Edinburgh. Like I just knew that if I went back to that environment, there was still an element of me that was still vulnerable. So if I went back into that, I would have just reverted back. Same mates, same things. Before I knew it, I would have just been back to it. So yeah, the lay community was definitely a place where after 18 months, it definitely sorted me out and just changed my whole perspective on life.
I think, do you know what the biggest thing, my sheer bloody mindedness and stubbornness of I won't be broken. I was already broken, and I can be really stubborn. I can still be stubborn now. And I thought, this isn't going to break me. I'm going to do this. And it was just about giving everything 100%, being honest and open owning who I was, what I'd done, not shying away from things, being brave, going places that were dark that I didn't want to, but I'd always hid in. I can remember we used to have a diary and we used to write things down. And I used to think the diary was to write things down so you didn't forget it, but it was so you remembered it.
It's crazy to think as well that you never think any of these things are possible. And like when you're in addiction, it's like you just can't see past the next day. You think from hour to hour, you think day to day. Whereas my whole sort of outlook was longer term plans, what I want today, career, ambition, excitement, fitness, like all these things. But I think what sort of underpinned it and what was crucial as well is like, it gives you the structure, you've got the accountability, you've got a work ethic, like you're practicing stuff that's got to make you successful in life. And yeah, that was where I got my main, well, that was the place that sorted me out really.
But also what I found helped me was helping others, being there for others, compassion, crying, holding people. I've got a friend, her mum used to write to her every week about the allotment, and we used to sit there on a Sunday afternoon and we used to read the letters together, and I just felt part of something. I felt like somebody welcomed me into the world with non-judgment. I'm actually friends with my friend's mum now, and I send her messages every now and again. She's less mobile now, but I talk to her about the garden that she has. And my friend still sends me, 20 years later, pictures of the allotment. I'm in the garden, and we talk about that. So it was being a friend for other people, but a proper friend. There were no agenda. There were no like, you can give me this. All it was friends. It was just human beings helping people.
So I got into this treatment centre called Yeldall Manor, and it was a Christian place, a faith-based residential rehabilitation centre for men. It wasn't treatment in the way that I understand treatment today, in that we didn't do any therapy. It was a wonderful big house, big rooms, huge grounds, 40 acres, woodland. The drive is amazing. It's about a quarter of a mile, maybe even half a mile, tree-lined pathway full of massive California redwoods. And then you get there and you see the house, and it's a house from the kind of, I don't know, 1850s, something like that, maybe older.
I went into this rehab absolutely terrified, and saw these 12 steps on the wall that I'd vaguely remembered from the meetings, and heard people talking in this therapeutic language that I didn't quite understand but started to grasp. And you know, one of my first thoughts were, God, this is some kind of culty religious program. But then I was really fortunate. I was in a room full of 5 guys, and there was this a good friend of mine, a chap called Linton. He was in there, and he was an English guy who'd become a Buddhist and gone to Thailand and all those places. And I said to him, you know, how'd you get yourself around this God stuff? You know, this sort of religious undertone to the 12-step movement. And he said, oh no, well, you can do it like this, you know, you can look at it as the interconnectedness of everything, and you know, you're not handing it over to a God, you're just handing it over, you're just letting go, and you know, you've got to admit you're insane.
There was counselling. There wasn't therapy except what they would call fellowship. So we had fellowship, which was singing hymns, you know, kind of more modern day Christian songs. We had what we would call teachings, which are like groups, and that would be looking at the Bible, drawing parallels from that to modern day living. There were some topics that we covered, things like security, self-worth and significance, and how do we get these things into our lives? Where does it come from? Where does our security come from? Where does our significance and self-worth come from?
I wanted to go every other day, you know, I wanted to leave and I wanted to use, and people just kept saying to me, just stay another 24 hours, just stay. And in that rehab, there was this big long room where it was like a lounge and a dining room, And at the end of that room, there was this plate that was framed. It was in a frame on the wall. And people said to me, when I wanted to leave and I said I was going to leave, they would say, go and read the plate at the back of the room. So I went down I remember going for the first time and looking at this plate, and it said, don't leave before the miracle happens. I didn't have a clue what that meant, but I just thought, okay, I'm just going to stay. If I feel like this tomorrow, I'll go. And invariably I'd feel better, and then I'd go through this cycle. But eventually everything started to click. And I started to realise, that I didn't have to use drugs and that I could be okay sober.
Maybe this is true of all people that are going through a process of change, but I wanted to push the boundaries. And so initially, and I knew the Bible reasonably well. I'd been to Sunday school, as a child, and the Bible wasn't unfamiliar to me. But I found myself wanting to know about it so that I could disrupt the teachings, so I could find the question that would make the tutor stumble or fall or get annoyed, and they never did.
I'd been using a drug of one form or another every day since the age of 13. I'd been stoned every single day. And 17 years later, I'm having my first completely clean day of my adult life. And it was like coming out of a dream. It was like being reborn. It was recognizing and learning and hearing and seeing and feeling things that I'd not experienced before, not to my recollection at the time.
What was happening there was a form of community life. We had structure. We got up at the same time every day. We had breakfast. We had to be showered and shaved and our rooms cleaned by a certain time. So there was a little bit of boot camp about it. Everything was governed by a bell. So a bell went for everything that happened. Bell goes and you've got to be somewhere within 15 minutes. And then the second bell goes and you've got to be there within a minute. And so you became trained by this bell to respond. But the structure was something I wasn't used to. I just did what I wanted every day until I got there.
And there were lots of things that came up when I spoke about my mum going blind. People's reactions were like, oh, that must have been really traumatic. And I was like, no, it wasn't. It was just, we just got on with it. And they were like, no, really, how was it? And I started to unpick all of these things. I talked about the sexual abuse for the first time ever. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it apart from one girlfriend that I'd had. I hadn't told anybody. And talking about it with people who had been through similar things, who had an understanding of what that kind of a trauma was, it really held me through a process of healing, and I began to heal. I began to feel better.
Some of the obstacles for me were that I didn't feel like the people that were there. I identified with the other residents up to a point, because when they started telling their kind of war stories about their drug use and their past and the amount of years they spent in prison, I didn't have similar war stories. I never went to prison. I never injected. I just smoked. I came from a different cultural background to many of the people there. And so for a while I didn't feel like I belonged there. I felt like a bit of an imposter. I actually went to my counsellor after a while and said, I think I need to leave this place and give my bed up for someone who's worse than me, because I'm not as bad as these lot. And they just laughed at me. They kind of said, you're as bad as anyone else. You know better, no worse.
I think the treatment that I had worked for me, and the program works for me for sort of a combination of different reasons. One was the timing. So I think if anyone had tried to get me to a rehab when I was, 19 or 20, there's just no way that would have happened. I think the gift of desperation, as it were, where I hit that rock bottom and couldn't take it anymore, and was, upset about crossing my moral boundaries and really, really despairing. That was something that motivated me and brought me the willingness. And I think willingness is key. I mean, one of the things I say to my clients is, if you really want to get well, The key ingredient is your willingness, you know, and if you're willing to take the guidance and try things and be open-minded and be honest with yourself and with other people, then you can get better.
What that place showed me is you're just like anyone else. You know, you got to earn privilege. You've got to, it doesn't just come of right, you know, you don't just get it because you're a special little boy. So yeah, I grew up there, I think. I grew up in this place. As a 23-year-old, I think I was more like a teenager. And that place taught me how to work, how to get up early, how to look after myself, how to look after others. We had a group once, one of the teachings. One of the person that was doing the teachings, it was a guy called David Partington. And he asked us a question as a group. And it was a scriptural question. And he said, when's a thief not a thief? And we all looked at each other like, this is really easy, you know, when you stop stealing. And then he read out a passage from the Bible, and I can't remember, I think it was in the New Testament, but he said, no, it's not when you stop stealing, it's when you work with your own hands and you can look after your own needs and you can support your neighbour. You get a bit emotional from time to time, but that was like a standard that was beyond, you know, people don't expect that kind of standard from people like me or people like us who have got a kind of past that's either traumatic or we've veered into behaviours that are unacceptable or not normal within society. So to suddenly have the bar raised, it was like, yeah, it's funny how even just recounting that moment takes me back to, wow, at the time that floored me.
And off I went to Devon, to this program, TC. And the funny thing is that many other rehabs are very similar. And the ethos of it, the daily reading, you got to do a daily reading, big on the wall. Everybody's got to do it. 65 inmates. 65 inmates pulling you up for like running to the gym in front of someone, pushing in lines. Walking with your jeans down your butty because you think you're a rude boy, that kind of thing. Like, and what happens is you don't realise you're doing it and you're drinking a cup of tea on the landing. It says, do not drink tea on this landing or cups on this landing. But you don't know you're doing it. And you'll sit down at 5 p.m, we call the evening meeting. Jason, stand up. What? I start. At 5 p.m, you're drinking tea on the landing, 100 words. What? 100 words? What? I'm breaking rules. I was like, oh my God, man. So then I'll run to the gym in the morning because I want to go gym. And I grabbed all the weights. About 10 different weights which I just didn't need. I just grabbed all these weights because I'm the man. So everybody else is the man. So you start arguing with someone. Go back to the meeting, 5 o'clock. Jason, at 6 a.m. in the morning, you run and intimidate the inmate. And intimidation and aggressive behaviour, 1,000 words on intimidating and aggressive behaviour, what it can get in the future. Like, what? My God. So I go to my cell and write 1,000 words of intimidation and intimidating behaviour, where it could get me in the future. Because if I'd done that in McDonald's or a gym out here, I could end up rolling around with somebody back in prison, back in where I don't want to go. So basically, I've done that for 18 months. And it was so dramatic. A weight lifted off me. I wasn't that same person. I wasn't that same man. I became a man. On that program, I actually became a man.
And I landed at this treatment centre and do you know what? I could do you a whole video on that treatment centre. But what I ended up doing 22 months in that place. Again, they didn't make them how they make them, like, or the programmes on there, like, it's scarce, but so time like that in a treatment centre, I don't know many that do that for what I do in normal line of work. In some places we use ourselves, but I'll tell you what, it was like, I think it's definitely been impacted on the changes I made and the path and the person who I become.
First thing you got to do, you got to write a life story. And I broke down, like, the first time I spoke about Joe. Because I never told no one about him. Like, I kept it bottled up. I never, like, told no one ever about Joe at all. You know, everybody used to ask me, why, how comes you're a barber? Like, how did you learn how to cut hair? But I never told him. It was him that taught me. You know, because I was so hurt, that I was so angry with him for leaving this earth and, like, leaving me. But why should I be angry with him? It wasn't his fault. You know what I mean? But, yeah, so, like, basically, by opening up, it motivated me to, like, want this change, you know, want this thing.
That long programme, man, like, at the end, as well, combined with the attempts, the previous attempts, you know, I believe that they were no wasted attempts, because that was also part of the learning, you know. Like, I could get the distance, I could get the stability, I could put the drugs down, you know, with the structure, the routine, with the environments, whether it was residential, you're removed, but it was like tripping up, going back, what was I doing wrong? So that last attempt, because it was a peer-led programme that I had done in the end for that 22 months, and it was all about a community of peers. You supported one another, you run the community, you know, so yous were responsible for the departments, for the cooking, to the cleaning, the full shebang, building the relationships up and trusting someone that they're no trying to get more than you, you know, they're coming from a selfish, manipulative place. Over a long period of time, my learning was, I suppose, that, like, it was important, you know, it was important, because even though I'd got the stability and I'd done it before, I never really grasped that anything I grasped the belonging to was in my addiction, using drugs. So for that, I got the period, I got the distance, and I never really felt part of anything. That made me realise that there was something I was felt part of that was outside of that thing that I felt part of, you know. I felt part of a supportive group, I had relationships. And this was off of that treatment centre that I'd come up to in Oxford that kind of drummed that into me, and what I'd learnt, you know, taking the responsibility and sharing what was going on in the head, man. You know, because fucking some of the stuff that goes on in our heads, you know, and because it can still today, you know. But like, I'm not got that, and I'm not carrying that myself. I definitely learnt that for there. And I definitely, I thought, right, for the previous attempts, I'm keeping this, you know. I'm gonna nourish this and keep a hold of this. So that's what I done, you know. When I was left to my own devices, without the structure there that I had to follow because of the programme I was in, and it was me on life's terms. I followed that on, you know. I kept that structure, I kept that routine, I kept building on the relationships.
The problem was, I still had an attitude problem. Attitude was still in my pocket, you know. Still had a chip on my shoulder. You can say the wrong things to me and I want to fight you. And you can't be fighting people in real war in society in itself, you know. And someone used to say something to me and I'll raise them up, I'll kick the door up. Like, I was that, like, teenager kind of delinquent kind of like kid that I wasn't a kid, I was an adult. But I was a kid inside, you know, because I went to prison when I was very young, and they say once you start your addiction, you stay at that age, you know, like. So I was very, like, unintelligent in that world. So I was kick doors, I was slam things, I wake up in the morning, I was angry, all that kind of stuff. And because of that, but I still had a nice inner, but my outer shell wasn't the greatest, you know. And I got kicked out of rehab for aggressive behaviour. And off I went back to crack again, because that's all I knew. But that was the last time, because I had a mental breakdown, a proper like mental breakdown. I was crying, smoking on my knees, crying, because I knew there was another way. I knew there was another way. and what do I know best? To end up in prison, you know. And I ended up in prison from there, basically. When I went back to prison, I was walking around the exercise yard. I think now you can go all different directions, but back in the days, there's only one direction you can go. I think anti-clockwise. So you can only go one direction. So I was walking with the people that were addicts, because that's who I knew to talk to. And the word addict, like I'll say, are you an addict? What are you on about, man? I'm not an addict, man. Like, it's my mates like, bro, you're ruining my bruz, man, because everything you talk about is recovery, bro. What the hell? Because my conversation wasn't the same no more. So when I was walking with my friends, that I thought were my friends, associates say, they were like always telling me like, bro, you changed, man. You're not the same no more. Because all I could talk about was recovery. And I found the rooms in prison, because you have like the anonymous rooms you can go to and meet people, that kind of thing. So when I went back to prison, I was back in prison with a massive healthy sentence, yeah. I knew I could change. I knew that I could be better. I knew from when I went back on the first week. It's weird that I knew that, but I knew this ain't me no more.
But then I met a person in the rehab, and I'm going to name him, Tony Herbert. Seems weird because I could talk about this man hundreds of times and not get emotional. But then sometimes it just catches me. Yeah, I met a man called Tony Herbert. 10 years clean, 10 years drug-free, crime-free, 10 years everything. Therapist in this rehab. He used to come on a Thursday night and do a drug talk. He was one of the lads. He was not whatever you call normal, just one of the lads. He used to drive a nice car, motorbike, funny, exciting, bubbly. Just someone I'd hang around with in the drug scene, because it would have been fun. But he didn't take drugs. And I couldn't get my head around it when I first met. What do you mean you don't take drugs? I don't even drink alcohol. What do you mean you don't even drink alcohol? Because drinking and taking drugs led me to where you are today. It led me into crime. It led me into that. So he opened my eyes up. So then I think when I realised maybe I have got a problem with drugs. And just a bit on that Tony Herbert. He helped me get clean in the early days to make me realise that I did have a problem. It wasn't... The problem was me. I was the problem. Drugs just escalated me, and having no guidance, just nothing about me. No positive role model. He was my positive role model. He was 10 years clean. 14 years later, 4 years after that day, he chose to use drugs again. And he's dead now. So then he helped me get clean. He keeps me clean today, because I know if I ever pick up, I will be the next Tony Herbert.
The other thing I would say is I'm not here because of me. You know, it wasn't me that got me clean. It was the people around me, you know, the counsellors, the peers, the family, the friends, and the love that I got from people, the support. I think that's integral. And I was guided in the right way by people who were informed and knowledgeable around addiction and recovery. And I don't think I could have done it without that. I think there's many people out there suffering who just haven't found the right support. So that's key. You know, I couldn't have done this without support. I didn't do this on my own, and I don't do it on my own today. You know, we all need people, and we all need love and care. And that's the one thing that really heals more than anything else.
One of the counsellors said, we didn't think you'd make the first night. And I said, what, did you think I was going to walk out? And he said, no, we thought you'd be dead. And that to me is, I was bad, but I didn't realise how bad my addiction was, or I suppose the person that I had been through addiction. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about life, and how to move forward within my life.
I think I've always been the person I am now. I think I'm becoming the person I should have been, or I wanted to be, or I needed to be. But I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm understanding. But I've still got the broken bits about me, and I've got to realise that I'm still broken a bit, and some of the bad things I don't like about me will come out. But that's usually when I'm not looking after myself.
One of the things that they did at this treatment centre was they used to invite ex-patients back to talk to the patients that were still in treatment about how they got back to work, how they got back in their families after they'd left treatment and all that, the difficulties that they were experiencing. And I was one of the people they invited to go back, and I went back a few times. And anyway, cut a long story short, the first time I went there, and I did a group. When I was leaving there, I was driving home from there, and I knew that was what I wanted to do for a living. I knew that's what I wanted to do for a living. That feeling of fulfillment that I'd never experienced in my life, ever. But that feeling was a great feeling.
When you wake up every day and you're not gambling and you're not lying and you're not robbing people or robbing your family, you just feel so much better as a person, as a human being. And I've just I thrived on it. I loved it. I actually loved going to the meetings. I actually was working all over the country, and I went to every meeting. I loved it, turning up. I also, when I chaired the meetings and spoke to people, I actually tell them, if I thought there was beating around the bush, that's what I was known for in the meetings, is I actually told them to the face. I says, look, he ain't going to work for you unless you do this. Obviously, I gave them encouragement not to carry money, to tell everyone that that you've got a problem. That's the more barriers you put up, the better chance you've got to succeed. That's what I did. I did everything I was told. I got a hobby. I packed in a job where I was earning good money to where I was earning any money, but it was a proper job. I did everything I was told, and it succeeded for me. Because what they say is, you see, when I was in the meeting and people come back and they've had a slip after 6 months and lost 10 grand or whatever amount of money, it's all because they've left little doors open.
So since I've been in recovery, or discovery, whichever one you want to watch it, whatever one you want to hear it, yeah, for me, I'm not recovering to something I used to be. I'm discovering a new life and a new way, and every day I'm learning every day. But since I've been where I am, I just want to help people. I was broken where, like I say, I was lucky I didn't commit suicide, where there's people who's been broken and are committing suicide. I've lost friends through overdose since being clean, drug-free. I've lost friends through suicide since being drug-free. I want to save everybody. I want to save people. I don't want people to, I can remember them feelings and them emotions how I felt broke. I can remember being in that bathroom where I wanted to commit suicide. I don't want people to feel the way I felt.
I think the challenges whilst in rehab were relationships. Relationships with men. That was an obstacle, because I sort of ran into one, which didn't turn out too good. So that was a bit of an obstacle. Taking on board advice from other people, because I always, and I still do, think I know best. So that was quite challenging. I think when I finished and I come out, I loved being normal, being drug-free, and just the simple things in life, like getting up and going to work. I really enjoyed it. But if I do something wrong, it was having to sit with them feelings. I sort of struggled with that because I'd make mistakes and I sort of compare myself to other people. And also struggled with sort of having honest conversations with people. So I've sort of struggled with that, and but I think that comes with time and building relationships.
I got given DCAT for the first time. Like, I had DCAT when I was very young, but all the other times I couldn't get it because I was a risk to the society. I was a risk to myself. The governor said, I believe you can use your tools in DCAT and see if they work. The governor said that. I was like, wow. And I went to the DCAT. When I was in the DCAT, I became a prison mentor to other prisoners, yeah? So I became a mentor. I was very, very motivated. They said to me, Jason, would you like to work in a recovery advocate in Aylesbury? I said, what's that? He said, basically you go to like a dip center, drug intervention program, and you mentor the people that are coming in. I said, yeah, but that's outside. Yeah, community service. So off I went to Aylesbury and I started to do that. I started to realize that, wow, I can help these people. I was outside in the prison, in the community behaving. I wasn't taking drugs. You know, like my head held high. Lots of people looked up to me. I used to go to the gym a hell of a lot, put a lot of weight on. I felt good within myself. But the thing was, still had fear in me. Will I go back to prison? When I get released, will I commit a crime? Like, that's the main thing I didn't want to do. I believed I knew I wouldn't pick up drugs again, but will I ever commit a crime? Will I lose my temper with someone? You know, they were the main things I was concerned about. Because that course I went and done, program was a behaviour program, because a lot of our behaviours keep us in that madness.
I definitely believe I'm a product of my environment, you know. I think we can learn loads, but whatever way that is, whether it's university, school, college, places like that, the schooly life I call it, you know. You can learn loads, but then if you didn't apply it and you didn't follow it, that soon gets diluted. And you can revert back to what you know best because you've just, like, you're comfortable because you've done it for years, you knew it for years. I kept that and I kept building on that. And I threw myself into what was an offer in the Oxford area, and I kept myself, I wanted to keep busy. I had to implement my own structure, I had to implement my own routine. I had to keep building on the relationships, and that's what I done. So I got involved, like, because I was uneducated, you know. I didn't know where I was going to fit in with work, and I got a wee basic job to start with. It was just in a hotel, like linen porter, you know, that basic, you know, just basically filling up the sheets, clean sheets for the housekeepers. But as I done that job and I started, like, it was game structure and routine, I felt like I just had a lot. I wanted to do more. I wanted to pursue more, and I got involved in voluntary work. But what I'm saying in that, it's not really what path you fought. Like, what, you know, it was the fact that I was just making sure I was busy, and I kept doing something that kind of made me feel like I had a purpose, and I wasn't sitting with too much thinking time, twiddling my thumbs. Because for me, my learning was, with that, I'd make fucking wrong decisions that would take me back, and it would be subtle, you know. It wouldn't maybe be straight to the drug of choice, you know. It would be some environments I would maybe making decisions to put myself in, and certain people. So I learned that last attempt that I wasn't doing that this time. And I suppose you hear these cliches in recovery and different platforms, but there's a sort of a lot of the same cliches in all platforms. Stick with the winners and you know, doing all that stuff. But that's fucking as simple as it is, really. That's what I done. You know, I stuck with the people that were rowing in that right direction, the ones that were encouraging me and inspiring.
Looking back to when I first rocked up in Oxford, I remember how I felt and like just who I was and what I seen my future as being. As it was just bleak. It was day to day. Whereas now it's, yeah, I've got that understanding in myself, and like, I wouldn't say anything's possible because obviously you keep things realistic, but the whole world is there almost now to do what you want. I think when you understand you, your limitations, your values and what makes you happy, as long as you're constantly working on that, then like life can actually be a beautiful thing. And I think you can lose sight of it at times, but I think, yeah, it's like, I wouldn't even say I'm religious in any way, but it's like I've got a faith in something. You know what I mean? I've got faith in myself. I've got faith in people. I trust people a lot more as well. I think that was one of the huge barriers for me as well. As I always thought, I think when you're in addiction, it's like you know everybody, but my experience was that you always have to keep your guard up. You know what I mean? You have to be really sort of careful about how you sort of operate and how you open up to people. But I think when you realise that that's just, that it served a purpose back then, it's something that's just, yeah, it's absolutely changed my life. And I think, yeah, I do just have to give myself a little pinch and try and sort of practice some kind of gratitude as well, and just always remember what it was like. And I think for the person that I'm today, it's funny, but like the worst situation in my life has actually created a path now where that's what I do for a living. You know what I mean? It's like using your bad experiences into something that actually, you know what I mean, you're then in a position where you're helping other people, and how you like just navigate life is like you're coming from a good place. And I do truly believe as well, it's like if you do the right thing, good things will happen to you. If you do wee sneaky things, something will come back and bite you in the bum. So I think living by that sort of code is, yeah, something that I'm sort of, yeah, I'm grateful for, but I know what I need to do to keep myself safe. Also know what I need to do to keep myself going on this sort of path. And although it's been 11, coming up 12 years now since I've left the community, it's sort of opened up so many different possibilities, and it's having that framework or like understanding in myself that sort of created that path. So yeah.
To me, it was all about stopping the drugs, stopping the crime, you know, at best getting some, you know, kind of shonky job that wasn't too onerous, but just put money in my pocket and allowed me to have a bit of a life. What he was saying was, there's a role beyond that. And actually part of your past, and this is what came out in conversations with him and with others at the place, it's not just about correcting your past, it's about using your past in some way to inform your future. And so if you've known what it's like to steal, it's not enough to just stop stealing. The thing we can aim at is working, taking care of ourselves, working with our own hands, and having enough left over for someone else that you might be helping. So there was they didn't define it as paying it forward, but what they defined it as was, you've got a role to play in society and in community, and you're capable of doing that. And we, I guess, our position, their position was, we expect that of you. And so it made me look up, I guess. It made me find a different horizon. And there were lots of those moments within the Yeldal journey. And it was also a place of pain, you know, because confronting yourself and what you've done and what's happened to you is not easy. So there were many times when we would be just doing ordinary things, but you'd really hate the place. You'd hate having to rake leaves, or you'd hate having to do kitchen duties, or whatever it was, because you really resented that you needed to look at yourself. You'd look at the rest of the world and you'd think, well, they don't have to do it. Just because I use drugs, why do I have to do it? Why can't I just be everyday folk? But I guess what they were doing was they weren't just aiming at a drug-free life. They were aiming at a life with purpose and with meaning.